Hello, hope everyone's good today. So I'm Lucinda and this is Sam and Laura. So we work at Natural Resources Wales, which is a Welsh Government sponsored body. If you don't already know, Natural Resources Wales is responsible for environmental protection, regulation and the maintenance of natural resources throughout Wales. So we're a team of 2 content designers and 1 digital content officer, and we've been working on a project focusing in on our permissions service. So what is permissions? So Natural Resources Wales, or NRW, as we'll probably start calling it now, owns a lot of land across Wales. So when people want to use the land, they may need to apply to us for permission to do that. So for example, some things people may want to do is film on our land, they might want to host a running event, or even just forage for mushrooms. They'll have to ask permission for that. So why we chose permissions? We started to look into this service because we recognised quite a lot of problems for our users here. So to apply to use our land, there are currently 6 different application forms on the website. So users have to make a choice, for example, if they want to apply for an event or an annual permission for an individual, or if they want a long-term agreement to use our land. So we made an assumption that this would be confusing, which we could later confirm with some user research and looking at form submissions. But we also knew that our staff were stressed out, some incomplete applications were taking up time, and we also know that users avoided dealing with us over other organisations. So our processes were much more complicated than other organisations, and that drove them over elsewhere. So all this mess, look at them go. So all of these things creates a ton of emails and calls to our customer lines. So back and forth between teams and just lots of time down the drain for us. Yeah. Move on. Okay. So one of the things we've been quite successful with has been getting some senior management buy-in. So the way we did this was really to go and make something without asking permission, which we could then demonstrate to show what we could do should we have permission. So we had the support of our own leadership, which is our line managers, and they got us into the right spaces, so the meetings that we could show this. So one of the big ones was we did a demonstration to our digital governance board, and we demonstrated what we could do and kind of gave a what we can do now, what we can do next, what we can do later, setting out what we can change now with our current resources and what we wanted to do long term with the right kind of funding. And that was quite a good one for us. Another thing we've been quite successful with is having a good relationship with the permissions team and the people that administrate these things. So Laura in particular worked with the team for a long time and knew and heard some of their frustrations over that. They had quite a large IT project be put on hold, and so they'd already been asked a load of questions and were quite fatigued by people coming in and kind of discovering at them and promising change. So what we did to demonstrate we were different was we went in with a prototype from the first meeting and kind of showed them our vision of what we wanted to do, and we immediately started fixing issues so they could already see change and just see that we're listening to them. So longer term now, we have a regular slot at their team meetings where we go in, show them something, open up discussion and involve the team in the decision making there. So here we're starting to look at a bit of a challenge for us. Initially, we wanted to go and look at a kind of one way in for users, one form that covers all types of permission, which filters them down to the right kind of questions for them. So we started doing things like mural mapping, looking at the application forms. We did some user research, internal and external. We looked at customer hub, our customer line inquiries. We started joining team meetings, recording them so we could reflect back later. But the more we looked, the more creepy crawlies emerged. Starting with everything just wasn't feasible. So instead, we took a thin slice, a check service that tells you if you need permission for us. And Laura will give you a bit of a demo of that shortly. So we're staying small, but exploring the rules, constantly learning. We've had to reframe and refocus a lot to be able to understand, but also move on with making. Laura?
Thanks, Lucinda. Okay, so like Lucinda mentioned, that there's always a lot to unpick. Content is the biggest challenge for NRW because of the amount of stuff people want to say. Evidence tells us that people struggle with the amount of content on our website. Users can't find what they're looking for, and they can't understand it if they do find it. Guidance in NRW tends to be commission-led. It has a formal sign-off procedure and often comes, and the guidance will often come to us at the end of that process. The permissions pages had a number of position statements and there were lots more in the pipeline, about 30 documents all in all. They tell people our position and what they could or couldn't do on our land. During user testing, we showed this to a user, and they said to us, there's an awful lot of information there. It's telling me more about NRW than what I, as a person reading it, needs to know. We decided, looking at this, we decided to not get bogged down in the argument, and we focused on what we know is right for the users. So we took a risk and we removed the permission statements from the website, putting them on the intranet for staff instead. And nothing bad happened, which was a really great, important learning for us to be bold and be brave. We had buy-in from the permissions leads to do this as well. So when we were challenged, or if people had asked where the statements were, they basically went back and said they weren't suitable for the website, and they'd point them to where they were on the internet instead. But very few people did actually ask for them. Wanted to show a bit of a brief example of the content in these permission statements. So this first example here at the top, it's an introduction taken from the position statement for open fires and fireworks. It says that open fires have been a focal point for human society of millennia, linked to a wide range of traditions and cultural activities, and are still to this day used for social and educational reasons. Fireworks, including Chinese lanterns, are also used regularly, used to celebrate events or as a spectacle in their own right. Another example here is taken from our position statement for horse riders, equestrian access it was called, telling horse riders where they can go without needing permission. So it says individuals on horseback are legally allowed to use public bridleways, restricted byways, or byways open to all traffic, also known as boats, on some common land. Individuals carriage driving have a right to be on restricted byways, boats. You can identify these routes on the maps held by the local authority. These examples show that the language is long. It expects people to know what all these different things mean. It also expects the users to go and identify routes themselves. It doesn't tell them where they can ride their horse. The introduction on that first example there also doesn't tell you if you can light a fire or not, or use a barbecue. It tells you the history. So it just gives you a bit of an example of how it looks. We need to be publishing information that people need to know, starting with the essential information. And we shouldn't be publishing everything we can. The evidence showed that people were arriving at those position statement pages, scanning the content and then moving to other pages and then exiting on the general inquiries page. So we could see that also inquiries were coming in, like, can I collect firewood from a forest, or can I camp on your land? So basically people were going to those position statements, they were looking around, they couldn't find the answer they were looking for, and then they were just sending us an inquiry instead. That was easier for them to do. So this is what we've done with the position statements. We took the flat content and we made them into a check service. If Lucinda could just open that link. Thanks, Lucinda. Okay, so this is our check service. This is the start page. This is what users see first. Really simple layout with a quick, with an easy to see start now button. And if a user does that, they can choose their language. They then get asked, what do you want to do? So they can choose from the drop down box here what they want to do. We can go for taking logs. That's always a really popular one. And it just tells them you're not allowed to take logs from the land we manage. Everything within a wood, including fallen branches and logs, is the property of the woodland owner. And then what we do is we've got a link then for more information about the valuable services to the ecosystem. So we provide that knock-on, that further link if they need it. If they are allowed, if they can apply for permission, we include a link for how they do that. So it's a really, really quick and simple tool for users. For the user, it's really quick and simple, but the background is much more complicated. But we've hidden that. So we've done all the hard work so users don't have to. We've got a link for that we can share afterwards, and you can have a look for yourself and have a play around with the service. All right. So another common challenge that we deal with as a big organisation is that we deal with various teams and people who do the same task differently. We're shining a light on this in our show and tells, but it is a challenge. We also have regional teams. So our online application forms often ask users to decide which area to send their application form to, forcing the user to decide or to make a decision based on how we work internally. We focused on overcoming this challenge with permissions, who actually have 7 regional areas. So users are having to choose between 7 areas of where to send their form to, by suggesting a central permissions mailbox for all applications. Now, the team, had concerns about this because of and we took the time to really understand what their concerns were around the volume of work it would create and how difficult it would be for so many people to manage a shared mailbox. So we decided to calculate how many applications were received, sort of each day, each week, to understand what the volume was. And it was a really low number. So when we were able to demonstrate the facts and provide the evidence. They were reassured and they agreed to try it. So we actually were able to implement a shared mailbox immediately. We should point out that regional differences in workloads are not accounted for, however, and customers might not be getting the same experience throughout Wales, and this is something that we continue to work on. So we also have challenges around measuring the success of what we're doing. So, for example, there's sparse customer hub records. Teams record things differently on various spreadsheets. There isn't a CRM. So we've done the best we can to overcome these challenges by doing a survey with the team. We asked them, we just did a really simple survey to find out how they felt about the permissions process, what they were finding as the biggest challenge within that, what applications, what documentation they were receiving that was maybe incomplete, like where they were seeing the biggest problems. And so we're able to then review that along the process. We've also added a feedback form to our beta pages. So the check service, for example, we've got a feedback form on there for users to tell us how they found the service. And we've also got a feedback form on our Newborough horse riding application page, which Sam will talk more about shortly. We're also working with the Customer Hub to change approaches to how they record customer inquiries. We use tools like Hotjar to see what users are doing on a page, and we've done user testing. We've done some user testing, and we've got some more lined up as well. So we're working the best we can to make. We're working to make the best of what we've got, which incidentally brings me to the next slide from Sam. So I'll pass that on.
Thanks, Laura. So yeah, as with all teams, we don't have oodles of staff and we don't have oodles of resources. We're a small digital team. We're heavy on content design, and as you can tell from Laura's slides, that's a good thing for NRW because content, really is the biggest problem for users. We don't have devs, so all of our solutions are kind of no code. We don't have interaction designers. We have a basic CMS. We have a test website, a duplicate of our Umbraco website, which is like a kind of play area for us, a sandbox. And we use a survey builder for our digital forms. So we are as resourceful as we can be. we have to work really hard to make the best of our resources. We've always got an eye on what's going on out there. We've had a close eye on Gov UK Pay and Gov UK Notify, and been thinking about how we could use both of those. NRW doesn't have a kind of standard payment system for users across the piece. So for lots of services, users are kind of phoning up and paying over the phone, or their bank transfers. There's differences right across the board. So we were really kind of interested in what Gov UK Pay could offer us. And we work as closely as possible to kind of GDS design system for kind of using patterns and page patterns and components, and how to kind of structure a form, etc. So we've always got our eye on that stuff. Next page. This is really an example of how we've spun together 4 different things for one service. So we were talking earlier about how we took a thin slice of a service, the permission service, rather than going at it as a big thing. We chose check if you need permission, and that's out there in beta. And the next thing we looked at was apply for a horse riding permit. We managed to pull together our CMS. So the first thing on the left there is apply for a Newborough horse riding permit. We've used the kind of GDS typical start page pattern for that. So use this service to ride a horse at Newborough. Start now. That takes the user through to, this is a mobile view. This takes the user through to Smart Survey. You can see in the URL at the top there, that's our form builder. So a very brief form to fill in. That then takes the user through to Gov UK Pay, a payment page. And the fourth image on the right there is us using Gov UK Notify. That's the actual permit. So what we've done with this is spin together 4 different things, brand them up, work with Gov UK, the different teams, Notify team and Pay team, to hopefully give users a much better experience. At the moment, just to say, users are working with quite a waffly form that's difficult to find on our website. We know that through them telling us, and users can't pay online. Somebody in the permissions team has to phone them once they've sent in a form, and then there are all sorts of problems because people don't want to pick up a phone, a number they don't recognise, etc., etc. So all of that process can just go on, and that takes us back to the cats. Lots and lots of time spent unnecessarily. So that's just an illustration of how we've kind of made the best of what we've got. Next slide. Yeah, working bilingually. Within NRW, we've started to get really good at kind of pair writing with the translation team, and used to that way of working. So we're creating bilingual content, making sure it makes sense for everybody. When we started working with Gov UK Pay, they didn't have a Welsh language version of all of the templates. So they didn't have a Welsh language version of the confirmation and refund emails, for example. So we were able to work with them on setting that up. And as you can see there, through working with us, they then had the evidence user need for that part of the process. So that was a really good thing to come out of it. And they were absolutely brilliant to work with. Another challenge is being slowed down. We like to move fast, and we kind of need to move at pace so we can keep showing things and keep talking about things and keep moving, keep learning. But sometimes, we were slowed down. We're currently stuck in a bit of a tricky situation with WorldPay. WorldPay is the payment service provider for sitting behind Gov UK Pay. So we're stuck in a bit of a world of bureaucracy with all that. And we're dealing with finance and all that as well. But while that is happening, we're using that time to test the prototype with users. So, what we kind of learned is not to worry if things get stalled or if things slow down, move on to the next thing, make the most of the time to test stuff with users, do some show and tells, and don't worry if things aren't perfect. Go with what you have if it's good enough to learn something from. Next slide, please. managing expectations. Okay, this has been a bit of a challenge. So we've kind of learned that when you're challenged on timescales, if you're ever challenged on timescales in show and tells, it's better to have done the kind of groundwork around showing people the complexities of the service, the complex and the inconsistencies that you're dealing with, and how, and the gubbins, show them the gubbins behind, or as we've called it here, show them how you make your humbugs. So a service can look simple, everything looks simple from a distance. The check service that Laura showed you, for example, that takes users a couple of seconds to do, but behind that, depending on the activity the user wants to do, we've got a lot of looping going on that the user doesn't see. So it's really, we found it's really important that you show that in show and tells. So there's two things. You're showing how complex and inconsistent services currently are, and what you're having to deal with to make a simple service, and then you're showing kind of how you've done that. And you can show it through murals, you can show it through all of your kind of user flows. There's lots of ways of doing that, but that's really important because simple things aren't simple to make. Hopefully that makes the point. Next slide. Yeah, this is to summarize really. Make a thing, just get on and make the thing, show the thing. Even if it's rough, make the thing to spark conversations, particularly when it's been really useful in kind of team meetings where there's differences in opinion or different ways of doing things. Showing a thing can really get those conversations going, which is great. This is where we learn stuff. Explore what you can use, what's out there. GovPay and Notify been just brilliant to work with, and we think we can make a difference for this service and possibly for others at NRW. So a bit of proof of concept stuff going on with that. Compile your evidence and keep it close. It's always all about the evidence. And linked to that, showing users struggling to do a thing on your website to management and leadership is really quite powerful, perhaps more so than it is with teams of people who deal with users regularly. It's something maybe management don't ever get to see, so it's really, really strong. Focus on delivering and keeping it small, and again linked to that, it's being ready to adjust the scope depending on what you learn. Just readjust, just change. Make it small enough so you can keep delivering a thing, and keep talking about it, keep communicating. Think about when you can seek forgiveness rather than permission. That goes back to Laura's slides about us removing content that didn't work for people. We knew that it didn't work, the evidence was there. So with that kind of backing for people in the team, we went ahead and did that, and show how you made the humbugs. That was really important. We're done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. One of the quotes there that stood out for me was, "You shouldn't publish everything you can." And I think it's a really good example of doing the hard work so users don't have to. That's kind of a phrase you hear often, but it's actually kind of putting kind of some meat on that phrase in a way.